Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead video, and today I'll be talking about what if Negan did not kill Alpha and instead embraced the Whisperers. But before we get into this video, a quick thank you to Hanzo CF3MH for providing this great what if scenario. So let's jump right into this with what if Negan embraced the Whisperers. And in this scenario, Negan does not kill Alpha and instead he provides Lydia to Alpha at the end of the Battle of Hilltop, and this would lead to a very different outcome to the war. The only reason the survivors won the war is because Negan killed Alpha and Beta went crazy and sent everything at once towards the survivors. But with Alpha still around and with Negan on their side, they would become an unstoppable force. Our survivors would try and flee. However, Negan knows about Oceanside, and Negan would aid Alpha in a way to try and drain the survivors of even more resources and try and kill them by just wearing them down. A lot like how that was Alpha's tactic before Beta went full on, let's just throw walkers at them. It would never be a big final battle. Our survivors would slowly just be wiped off the map, with Alpha and Beta and Negan being the new Gamma, just following them across Virginia, just slowly taking them down. And it'd be a very sad end to our community, and that's what I think would happen. Just because Negan's a very smart character and Alpha is a very smart character, they would never give our survivors the upper hand like Beta ended up doing by just throwing everything all together. They would never have that situation. They'll just keep throwing the horde in parts towards the survivors, and they would eventually just die off or be killed off. And looking further into the Walking Dead timeline, this would affect things like when Maggie returns to Virginia, she would then starve with her group because there is no Alexandria for her to fall back on. She would then die or be caught up by the Reapers, and because there's no Daryl in that lot, the Reapers would continue to be at large in the greater Washington DC area, raiding and killing anyone they come across. And also, the Commonwealth continued to be this massive corrupt community. Without our survivors, Pamela is never overthrown, Lance never dies, and maybe could be a power struggle between Lance and Pamela in the future, but the Commonwealth would continue to run the way it was, and the characters which left the Whisperer War early on, so Yumiko, Ezekiel, and Eugene would be stuck at the Commonwealth. Ezekiel would die from his cancer, and Yumiko and Eugene would just be stuck at the Commonwealth with nowhere else to go. And that's how the story of The Walking Dead would end, in my opinion, with a few survivors that survived because they left before the war, go into the Commonwealth, or already at the Commonwealth, just stuck at the Commonwealth. And we got to also talk about the spin-offs. Because there's no Daryl, he's already dead, there is no The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, which means that everyone in the monastery in episode 1 doesn't really die, and the only reason Laurent became on Madame Janae's radar is because of the attack at the monastery. The nuns are going to keep Laurent hidden, and they're going to take him to the nest, which will lead to Ron actually dying at the nest, and Madame Janae would continue to perfect her variant walkers and continue to be at large in France, maybe even spreading variant walkers across the entire world. Dead City wouldn't happen at all. However, the ones who live would not change at all, as both Rick Grimes and Michonne both left before it all went down, so they didn't know the outcome. So the events of the ones who live would continue to play out exactly the same, all the way up to the final scene when Rick and Michonne would find out Alexandria no longer exists and would grieve and stay living in Philadelphia. And that is what I think would happen in this what if scenario. What if Negan embraced the Whisperers, and that would lead to everyone dying. Negan would help Alpha win the war, and most of the spin-offs would not happen outside of the ones who live, which would be unaffected by the events of the survivors all dying in season 10 of The Walking Dead. However, this is just my opinion, so please tell me down below, do you agree with this what if scenario? Do you disagree it would play out differently? I'll let you know all your thoughts down in the comments. But this is it for me today, so thank you for watching.